Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, Chef. Jon Favreau was a director who I really liked as a mainstream big Hollywood director. Both Iron Man and Elf, he had really made films that were more about character for you as the audience to get into that character, whether it was Tony Stark or Buddy the Elf. He always really cared and felt passionate about that character. And if you think about both those films, they have such a connection with audiences. They're still remembered so fondly. And I was kind of disappointed, as were I think a lot of people, at the films he made after that, like Iron Man 2 and Cowboys and Aliens, where he seemed to not be that kind of filmmaker. He seemed to just be another commercial, big budget director. And I found that really disappointing. And I was kind of afraid that we had lost that guy who could make a film like Iron Man or Elf, and that he wouldn't really come back. And there are a lot of directors that don't. Once they become a big deal, sometimes they can continue, and others don't ever come back. I still miss Rob Reiner. It didn't look good for Favreau. But then I saw Chef, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much of a return this was for him, and how this is back to the almost Altman-esque character pieces and character studies that he did in Iron Man and Elf. To really have a film that's audience friendly in kind of a more of a passionate character way than you expect from most mainstream big budget filmmakers. Chef Carl Caesar, played by Jon Favreau, has been cooking at the same restaurant for a better part of 10 years. And he's a workaholic chef. He's divorced from his wife, Sofia Vergara, and barely sees his son, Percy. He goes on errands with him, but doesn't really know him. He has a big food critic coming, a food critic who helped launch him in the first place, to come and review the food he's cooking at the restaurant. And he wants to make a whole new menu, and Dustin Hoffman, who is the restaurant owner, won't allow him to do that. So he cooks the same menu as he always does, and he gets a very terrible review from this critic. And he gets upset and has a big public fight through social media and in person with the critic, played by Oliver Platt. He loses his job because he had the fight at the restaurant, and then the video went everywhere, it went viral. And so he needs to find a new line of work and something that he's passionate about. He wants to cook in a kitchen, and he fixes up a food truck selling Cuban sandwiches and drives around cross country with his son and his former friend in the kitchen, Martin, played by John Leguizamo, and they go from Miami to Los Angeles on a cross country tour, serving lots of food through their food truck and learning about each other in the process. That this film is so much about a chef who has gotten terrible reviews, has kind of lost his way. There's no way you can't talk about his last two films and how, even though he was very successful and he was doing pretty much the kind of films everyone expected a director like him to do at that point, I had felt, and I think a lot of people had felt, he had lost his way, much like the chef in this film. It does feel like he's talking about himself, that he went small again and he found himself. I think he kind of realized he wasn't being the director that we all wanted him to be. And maybe he wasn't the director he wanted to be. He was very much in that independent vein. Of course, he also wrote Swingers, and that's really kind of a character study as well. He's very much an actor's director because he creates these rich, strong characters. Really, most of his films are about one singular protagonist and the people that surround them. And with Elf and with Iron Man, they're both very independent and different from a mainstream film, but they're predictable, but in a way that you love a Hollywood film. It's something you can snuggle up and watch on the couch and not be too challenged by necessarily, but something that's still well made. He cared about watching Robert Downey Jr. make an Iron Man suit. And in this film, he cares about you seeing the food. You get this character's passion for food. You get it's important to him. He has a very good exchange with his son where he says, we're not serving a burnt sandwich, even though these guys weren't paying for it. They were just guys who helped them load stuff onto the truck. He was like, doesn't matter, we don't serve this. It's like, it's something he loves. And I think that shows in this film. It's like, yeah, he could do other things. He could do Cowboys and Aliens or something like that. But he has a pride in himself. It's like he doesn't want to do that. He is so good with actors. I mean, he's made two major movie stars in his directorial career. He helped Will Ferrell become an even bigger star than he already was, and then he basically made a huge star out of Robert Downey Jr. And in this film, he has such a great slew of actors. I mean, you can say like he wanted to go back to his roots, but he got tons of major movie stars. I mean, Sofia Vergara is his ex-wife, John Leguizamo, and John Leguizamo is the best I've seen him in years. And I like John Leguizamo. He really like came alive in this film. You know, it was a very good supporting role for John Leguizamo. Scarlett Johansson's in this, Oliver Platt, Bobby Cannavale, who is a good big personality actor, who Jon Favreau is excellent at working with big personality actors. Robert Downey Jr. has one scene as a favor to him, I guess. And Amy Sedaris, and even the kid who plays Percy, MJ Anthony, is very good. He's very good at working with these actors, and he even pulls a better performance out of himself than I've seen from Jon Favreau in forever, probably since Swingers, almost. I don't know, but close to that. It's one of his better performances. It's maybe not a star-making performance like Elf or Iron Man, but it's definitely a better performance than you'd really expect from him. He's kind of someone who gets how to make a mainstream Hollywood movie. It doesn't mean completely selling out like The Burnt Sandwich. Like, he cares about making a film that the audience is going to enjoy. And Chef definitely does that and puts you into the passion with the food. You get that he's passionate about something, that the writer and the director of this film, who is Jon Favreau, of course, it means something to him. It's important to him. And him going back to this kind of a film shows that so excellently. Maybe this is too much in the Midnight in Paris-y kind of vein, where it is kind of a film that you could take to the suburban multiplexes and it's ready for that. But there's nothing wrong with it when someone like Jon Favreau has his hands on it and has such passion towards it and shows you, you know, the passion behind creating something and what that means to him. He really wants to have the movie play well in a theater. I don't know a lot of directors who necessarily care as much about that as him. When I was starting to get into movies and when I was a kid, Rob Reiner was one of my favorite directors. And it's like it just ended and he's still alive. It just sucks. Like, that's awful. You just don't feel that passion anymore. They don't have that thing that you loved about them. I'm so happy that Jon Favreau clearly hasn't lost it at this point. And I know him and Rob Reiner, I guess they're both in The Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know, it's just because I was thinking about Rob Reiner. Chef is a very enjoyable, fun, audience-friendly movie. It's a good light date film. I had to eat something right afterwards because goddamn, this movie made me hungry. I guess you could knock me for this not being hugely challenging, different kind of a movie. But I think this is the kind of film I want from my mainstream directors. I want them to get really into character, and I want a connection as an audience. And that's what I want, and that's what, thankfully, Jon Favreau realized that he wanted as well, and that's a joy to see. Just as much of a joy as it is for him to direct and for his character to make this food. So if you've seen Chef and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.